The black SUV had barely stopped when the rear door flew open and a tiny girl scrambled inside, her small body shaking as she wedged herself beneath the leather seat. "Please," she whispered, clutching a worn stuffed rabbit to her chest. "Don't let them take me." Kwame Dlamini the feared CEO, whose name could make boardrooms fall silent, turned in irritation until the child lifted her arm to shield her face. And then he saw it, a crescent-shaped birthmark on her shoulder. The same mark every first daughter in his bloodline had carried for generations. In one frozen breath, the powerful man who trusted no one realized the impossible. The frightened 5-year-old hiding in his car might be his daughter. Before we go on, tell me honestly, if a terrified child climbed into your car and one detail made you believe she was your own, would you protect her first or demand the truth immediately? And where are you watching from today? Drop your country and local time in the comments. If you enjoy emotional, dramatic stories filled with shocking twists, justice, and healing, subscribe and stay with me for the next part. Kwame Dlamini had spent half his life mastering control. He controlled markets. He controlled negotiations. He controlled the pace of every room he entered, every headline written about him, every trembling executive who sat across from him at a glass conference table and tried not to sweat under his gaze. But nothing in his carefully engineered world had prepared him for the little girl now curled against the far corner of his back seat, clutching a threadbare stuffed rabbit, as if it were the last safe thing left on Earth. The rain hammered harder against the black SUV. Outside, the city of Nairobi blurred into streaks of silver and red traffic lights, smearing across the wet windows like wounded color. Inside, silence pressed thickly between the leather seats. Kwame kept staring. The crescent-shaped birthmark on the girl's shoulder had disappeared beneath the sleeve of her faded yellow dress, but it remained burned into his mind. That mark was not common. In his family it was almost a legend. His grandmother had one. His older sister had one. Even an old portrait of his great-grandmother showed the same pale crescent near the left shoulder. He had once been told, half-jokingly, that the first daughters of the Dlamini bloodline carried the moon on their skin. He had laughed then. He was not laughing now. So his driver Mosi asked carefully from the front, "Should I call security?" The child flinched so violently at the word security that her head struck the door. "No," she cried, her voice cracking. "Please, no security. They'll tell them. They always tell them." Kwame's eyes narrowed. "Who is they?" he asked. The girl pressed herself tighter into the seat, wide-eyed and trembling. Rainwater still dripped from the ends of her braids onto the polished black leather. She looked too small for this fear, too young to carry it with such instinctive familiarity. When she did not answer, Mosi turned slightly. "Sir, maybe we should take her to the police." Again the girl panicked. "No police," she shouted this time, tears springing into her eyes. "Mama said no police. Mama said if bad people smile, it doesn't mean they're good." That landed in the car with a strange weight. Kwame leaned back slowly. He should have ended this already. That was what the old version of him would have done. Hand the matter off. Let systems handle it. Let someone else absorb the confusion. But the old version of him had not just looked into the face of a child who carried the moon-shaped mark of his family. "What is your name?" he asked, quieter now. The little girl hesitated, as though names were dangerous things to give away. Then she whispered, "Amara." Kwame repeated it silently in his mind. Amara, a name soft enough for tenderness, a name that did not belong in terror. "How old are you, Amara?" She held up 5 tiny fingers without speaking. 5. Something unpleasant moved through him. A calculation, a date, a memory trying to pry open a locked door inside his chest. He shoved it back down. "Where is your mother?" At once, Amara's face changed. The fear remained, but now something even worse entered it. Guilt. "She told me to run if I saw the men again. the child whispered. She said, "Find a place with many people." But they were there too. So I ran to the big cars because maybe rich people don't look under seats. Mosi let out a slow breath. Kwame looked out the rain-streaked window, jaw tightening. So someone had been following her. Following them. Did they hurt your mother? Amara's lower lip trembled. She fell. That was all. But children had a brutal way of saying the worst things simply. Kwame made his decision in that instant. "Drive," he said. "To the penthouse?" Sir Mosi asked. "No." Kwame's answer came sharp, immediate. "Not the penthouse. That location was too public, too obvious, too exposed to staff cameras' gossip, and anyone paid to listen." He thought quickly. There was another place. An apartment he rarely used. Officially owned through a holding company. Quiet. High security. Invisible to almost everyone in his life. To Riverside Heights. Private Unit 17. Mosi glanced at him in the mirror, surprised. "Yes, sir." As the vehicle pulled away from the curb, Kwame removed his suit jacket and held it out. "Put this on." Amara stared at the expensive fabric like it might bite her. "It's dry," he said. Slowly, cautiously, she reached for it. Her fingers were tiny and cold. When she pulled the jacket around herself, it nearly swallowed her whole. For some reason, that image struck him harder than her tears had. He looked away. 20 minutes later, they entered the private apartment through a secure underground garage. Kwame carried Amara himself after she nearly fell asleep from sheer exhaustion in the elevator. She smelled of rain dust and cheap soap. Her cheek rested against his shoulder with an unconscious trust that made him strangely uneasy. He was not a man used to being trusted. Inside the apartment was all clean lines and muted luxury. Grey stone, dark wood, glass. Expensive art chosen more for prestige than feeling. It had never really been lived in. Tonight, for the first time, it felt almost ashamed of that. Kwame set the child gently on the cream-colored sofa. A house manager was called in from the lower staff floor, not one from his main residence, not one tied to his mother's network, and certainly not one known to the board. Her name was Saad, an older woman with sharp eyes and a calm voice. One look at Amara, and her whole face softened. "Oh, little bird," she murmured. "You're freezing." Within minutes, she had brought warm towels, milk, and bread with honey. Amara devoured the bread with the desperate concentration of a child too used to hunger. Kwame watched in silence from across the room, one hand in his pocket, the other still holding his phone, though he had not unlocked it in several minutes. Slowly, Sade coaxed. "No one is taking it from you." Amara paused at that, then glanced up first at Sade, then at Kwame. That look was not trust. It was measurement, as if she were asking herself whether powerful adults ever meant what they said. Kwame felt something cold move through him. "What is your mother's name?" he asked once the child had eaten enough to breathe normally again. Amara licked honey from her thumb and answered, "Mama says not to tell strangers." Sade almost smiled. Kwame did not. "I'm not a stranger." Amara looked directly at him for the first time. "Yes, you are." The words were simple, honest, merciless. Somewhere beneath the armor of the man they hit with humiliating precision. Before he could answer, the child added, "Mama said, people with clean shoes lie the best." Sade coughed to hide what might have been a laugh. Kwame looked down at his polished Italian shoes and felt absurdly as if he had just been insulted by a very small judge. "Did your mother say anything else about people like me?" Amara nodded solemnly. "She said rich men are the most dangerous when they feel sorry for you." The room went still. Kwame's face gave nothing away, but inside him something tightened with old rusted pain. There had only ever been one woman in his life who spoke with that kind of blunt fire. One woman who believed pity from the powerful could be more poisonous than cruelty. Nia. The name came back with such force that for a moment he could almost see her again, standing under the jacaranda trees outside the university gates, books held to her chest, sunlight touching the gold brown of her skin. She had laughed at him the first day they met, laughed at his expensive watch, his driver, his effortless certainty that the world would bend in his direction. "You look like a man who has never been told no," she had said, "and you look like a woman who enjoys saying it." He had replied, "She did. God, she did." Kwame closed his eyes for a second too long. When he opened them, he found Amara studying him. "Mama cries when she sees your picture," the little girl said. The air left his lungs. Sade slowly straightened from where she had been folding a blanket. Kwame's voice dropped. "What picture?" Amara pointed vaguely toward the television, as if the answer should have been obvious. "The one where you talk and everybody claps. Mama turns it off fast, but one time she cried before she could." Kwame did not move. Nia. It had to be Nia. No other possibility fit. Not the mark. Not the distrust. Not the old wound suddenly reopening in his chest like it had never healed at all. But Nia had vanished 6 years ago. No explanation. No goodbye that made sense. Just a broken ending, and a silence so complete it had eventually hardened into anger. He had searched at first. Not publicly. Never publicly. But enough to bruise his pride. Then had come the messages, the ones that had ripped everything apart. Messages that told him she had chosen someone else. That she was tired of being the secret burden in a powerful man's life. That love did not pay rent. He had believed them because they were cruel in exactly the way truth often was. Or so he had thought. Now looking at the child in front of him, every certainty he had built on that old pain began to crack. His phone buzzed. He glanced down. It was Lila, his fiancée. He let it ring once, twice, 3 times, then silenced it. A second later, another call flashed across the screen. Jonah, his chief assistant. Efficient, loyal, always near. Too near, perhaps. Kwame silenced that one too. Across the room, Saad noticed, though she said nothing. Amara had finished eating. The sugar and warmth were pulling her toward sleep. Her eyelids drooped. Still wrapped in his suit jacket, she curled sideways against the sofa cushion and clutched the stuffed rabbit beneath her chin. Just before sleep took her, she murmured, "Don't tell them I'm here." Kwame stepped closer. Who her eyes were already closing. "The smiling ones," she whispered. "Mama said the smiling ones are worse." Then she fell asleep. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Rain tapped softly against the wide glass windows. The city lights below shimmered like broken stars. Kwame looked at the sleeping child, then at the birthmark just visible again near the edge of her collar. His reflection in the dark window looked like a stranger. Finally, without taking his eyes off her, he spoke. "Sade." "Yes, sir. No one enters this apartment without my permission." "Understood. No calls patched through, no staff records, no digital logs." Sade's brows lifted a fraction, but she nodded. "Understood." Kwame unlocked his phone at last. His thumb hovered for only a second before dialing a private investigator he had not used in years. When the man answered, Kwame's voice was low, steady, and more dangerous than shouting. "I need you to find someone," he said. "A woman named Nia. Start with every clinic, shelter, school registration, and rental file you can reach. Quietly." He looked again at the little girl sleeping in his jacket. "Because if I'm right, he said someone stole 5 years from me." Kwame Dlamini did not sleep that night. He remained seated in the armchair across from the sofa until dawn, his elbows resting on his knees, his untouched coffee gone cold beside him. The city beyond the glass walls slowly shifted from midnight black to pale grey, but his thoughts never quieted. Every time he looked at the sleeping child curled beneath his jacket, his chest tightened with the same impossible question. What if she is mine? He had spent years believing that chapter of his life had ended in betrayal, that Nia had chosen money, comfort, or another man over him, that the pain in his chest when she disappeared had simply been the price of loving foolishly. But now a little girl with Nia's eyes and his family's birthmark was sleeping in his hidden apartment while whispering warnings about smiling enemies. Nothing about that felt like coincidence. At 6 in the morning, Amara stirred. She blinked awake, slowly confused for half a second by the unfamiliar room, then panic flashed across her face. Kwame stood immediately. "You're safe," he said, perhaps too quickly. She froze, staring at him. Then recognition softened her fear. "Oh," she whispered. "The car man." Kwame almost smiled despite himself. "Yes, the car man." Saad entered moments later, carrying a tray of warm porridge and fruit, smiling gently. "Good morning, little bird." Amara sat up cautiously, rabbit still in hand. "Where's Mama?" The question hit the room like a blade. Kwame crouched in front of her, lowering himself to eye level. "We're going to find her," he said carefully. Her little face scrunched with sudden fear. "She'll think I left her." "You didn't. She told me never to run far." "You did exactly what she told you to do," Kwame replied. "You stayed safe." Her eyes welled with tears. What if she's scared? The brutal innocence of that question lodged somewhere painful beneath his ribs. "She's probably looking for you too," he said. Amara wiped her face with the heel of her palm and whispered, "Mama always finds me." That sentence, spoken with such certainty, made him envy a bond he had not even known existed until 12 hours ago. Before he could answer, his phone vibrated. "Private investigator found possible lead." Kwame stood immediately. "I'll be back," he told Sade. Then he stepped into the hallway and answered. "What do you have?" "I searched every local clinic and emergency intake from the last 12 hours, the investigator said. "One woman matching your description was admitted late last night under minor trauma. Name listed Naya Okoro." Kwame's breath caught. Hospital name. Ward number. He memorized them instantly. "She arrived alone?" he asked. "Yes. Witness said she kept asking for her daughter." That was enough. "I'm on my way." 25 minutes later, Kwame strode through the private hospital corridor in a dark overcoat, moving with the focused speed of a man no one dared stop. Nurses glanced up, startled by the sheer force of his presence. Outside room 214, he paused, then slowly pushed the door open. And there she was. Nia. Older, thinner, wearier than the woman memory had preserved, but unmistakably her. Her once bright face was sharper now, touched by hardship. Her cheekbone bore a fading bruise. Her hair, once always braided beautifully, was tied back carelessly, as if survival had become more urgent than vanity. But even pale beneath hospital light, she was still the woman who had once broken his heart. She turned, saw him, and froze. The silence that followed was suffocating. For one heartbeat, neither moved. Then Nia's entire expression transformed into horror. "Where is she?" Kwame stepped inside. "She's safe." "Where is my daughter?" she screamed, ripping IV wires from her arm. "Nia!" She lunged from the bed so violently she nearly collapsed. "If you touched her, if your people touched her," Kwame caught her before she hit the floor. The instant his hands touched her arms, both of them froze. It had been 6 years. 6 years since he had touched her. 6 years since he had held the woman who once knew every hidden part of him. The contact felt like electrocution. Nia yanked herself away, instantly breathing hard. "Don't touch me." Her voice shook not from fear but rage. Kwame stared at her. "She's safe. She's with someone I trust." Tears flooded her eyes so suddenly it stunned him. "You have no idea what I've gone through since she disappeared last night," she whispered. "No," he said softly. "I don't." That broke something in her. "You don't know anything," she snapped. "You never did." Quam's jaw tightened. "Then explain it to me." Her laugh came sharp and bitter. "Explain what? Why I vanished, why I raised your daughter alone while working 2 jobs until my hands bled, why I taught her to run from rich men because rich men destroy everything they touch." The room went silent. Kwame stared at her, every muscle locked. "You knew," he whispered. Nia's face twisted in disbelief. "You didn't?" He stared back, equally stunned. And suddenly both of them understood. Neither had expected the other's reaction. Neither had known what the other believed. Kwame stepped forward. "Nia, I didn't know." She shook her head slowly, eyes filling with tears of rage and heartbreak. No, don't do that." She pointed at him. "Do not stand there pretending innocence after what you did. What I did." Her voice rose. "You abandoned me." Kwame recoiled as if struck. "You sent those messages?" "What messages? The ones saying you chose someone else, that you were done being my burden, that love didn't pay your rent." Nia stared at him. Then her face drained completely of color. What Kwame's breathing grew shallow. "You denied the baby was mine. You told me never to contact you again." Her lips parted. Then she whispered, horrified, "I never sent anything like that." Silence crashed over the room. Kwame's stomach dropped. "No," he said. Nia shook her head frantically. "I never sent those messages. I waited for you. I called you for weeks. Then your number stopped working," your assistant said. "You didn't want contact, and someone delivered an envelope with money and a letter telling me to disappear because your family would never accept me." Kwame's blood ran cold. What Nia was crying openly now. "I thought you sent it," she shouted. "I thought you paid me off like I meant nothing." Kwame stumbled backward. No. His mind raced violently. His assistant. Only one person had controlled his communications back then. Jonah. Jonah had filtered calls, emails, messages. Oh God. Kwame's entire reality tilted. Someone had lied. Someone had manipulated both of them. Someone had destroyed 6 years of their lives. Nia saw the horror dawning in his face and realized the truth at the same moment. "Oh my God," she whispered. "You really didn't know." Kwame dragged a hand down his face. "She's mine," he said hoarsely. "Isn't she?" Nia hesitated. Then, after a long silence, she nodded. The room seemed to spin. Kwame sank into the chair beside her hospital bed, suddenly unable to stand. A daughter. He had a daughter. 5 years old, 5 birthdays missed. 5 years of scraped knees, nightmares, first words, laughter, sickness, tears, gone. Stolen. And the woman he had once loved had suffered alone, believing he had thrown her away. Kwame's voice broke. "Why didn't you come find me?" Nia laughed through tears. "Because I thought you hated me." That answer nearly destroyed him. He covered his mouth, staring at the floor. "I searched for you," he whispered. She stared. "What?" "For months after you vanished." Fresh tears streamed down her cheeks. "I waited for you," she whispered back. Neither spoke for a long time. Then Nia's expression hardened. Where is Amara? Kwame stood instantly. "Come with me." 30 minutes later, the apartment door opened. The moment Amara saw her mother, she screamed with joy. "Mama!" She launched herself across the room. Nia collapsed to her knees, sobbing as she caught her daughter in her arms. "My baby, my baby, my baby." Kwame stood frozen nearby, watching them cling to each other with desperate love. And then Amara turned, smiling through tears. "Mama, this is the car man. He saved me." Nia looked up, straight at Kwame. 1,000 emotions passed silently between them. Pain, love, grief, bitterness, history, and something new. Possibility. Then Amara innocently smiled and said, "Mama, why do you both look at each other like you're gonna cry?" Neither adult answered, because neither knew how to explain to a child that in less than one day their whole world had changed forever. But one truth was already certain in Kwame's mind. Someone had orchestrated this betrayal, and whoever stole his family from him was going to pay. The apartment had never felt smaller. Though its walls were built of glass and polished stone, though the ceilings rose high and the windows opened toward half the glittering city, the space now seemed too narrow to contain what had entered it. 6 years of grief, 2 broken versions of the same story, and a child innocent enough to stand smiling in the center of both. Amara was the only one at peace. She sat cross-legged on the rug with her stuffed rabbit and a cup of warm milk Sade had brought her, humming softly to herself, as if the worst danger in the world had already passed simply because her mother was near again. But adults knew better. Adults understood that rescue did not end fear. It only changed its shape. Nia had not let go of her daughter for more than a few seconds since arriving. Even now, though Amara was safely within arm's reach, Nia remained perched on the edge of the sofa with the rigid posture of someone prepared to flee at any sign of betrayal. Her fingers rested constantly on the child's shoulder, her thumb moving in small, restless circles, as if reassuring herself that Amara was real. Kwame stood near the window, silent and still, one hand in his pocket, the other hanging at his side. He had faced hostile shareholders, predatory politicians, and men whose smiles concealed wars. None of them had ever unsettled him like the woman now sitting in his private apartment, with bruises on her cheek and distrust in her eyes. Sade, sensing what the room had become, quietly withdrew after placing food on the table. That left the 3 of them alone. The silence stretched until Amara, oblivious to the storm surrounding her, looked up and asked, "Can we stay here forever?" Nia's face softened at once. "No, baby." "Why not?" "Because this is not our home." The words were gentle, but they landed like stones. Kwame looked at Nia. "Then where is your home?" Nia did not even turn toward him. "A place you do not need to know." Amara frowned. "But he helped me." Nia kissed the top of her daughter's head. "That does not mean we belong here." Kwame's jaw tightened. He understood caution. He understood fear. But there was something in the way she said belong that made it sound as though he were not merely a stranger, but a danger she had expected all along. He stepped away from the window. "We need to talk." Nia finally looked at him, and the force of that gaze was enough to halt a weaker man. "No," she said. "You need to explain." Kwame let out a slow breath. "I already told you I did not know about Amara, and I already told you that does not erase anything." Her voice was not raised. That made it worse. It would have been easier if she shouted, easier if she broke plates, accused him wildly, turned him into a villain he could either deny or become. But this calm rage, this disciplined pain, it forced him to stand inside the weight of what had been lost. Amara glanced between them. "Are you fighting?" Nia immediately softened. "No, sweetheart." Amara considered that with the eerie skepticism children often reserved for adult lies. "It sounds like fighting." Kwame crouched down near the child, careful not to move too close. "Your mother and I are talking about something important. About me." He looked at her small face, so open, so watchful, and answered honestly, "Yes." Amara hugged her rabbit tighter. "Did I do something bad?" The question cut through both adults at once. Nia pulled her daughter close. "No, never." Kwame felt a hot, unfamiliar anger move through him, not toward the child, not toward Nia, but toward the years that had taught a 5-year-old girl to assume trouble, was her fault. He straightened. "Amara," he said gently, "would you like to sit with Sade in the kitchen for a few minutes? She said she has mango slices." The child's eyes brightened slightly, but she turned immediately to Nia for permission. That too struck him. Nia nodded. Only the kitchen, and only with Saad. Amara slid off the sofa and padded away, clutching the rabbit by one ear. The moment she disappeared down the hall, the air changed. The softness went with her. Now there were only 2 adults in a room full of ghosts. Kwame spoke first. "I need to know everything." Nia laughed once, short, bitter, unbelieving. "Everything?" "Yes." "Interesting. 6 years ago I begged for 5 minutes. Now you want everything." He absorbed that without flinching, though it hit hard. "I deserve that," he said. She folded her arms tightly. "No. What you deserve is far less kind." Kwame nodded once. "Then be unkind." For a second something flickered in her face, surprise maybe, but it vanished quickly. "You want the truth?" she asked. "Fine." She stood too restless to remain seated and began pacing slowly before the coffee table. "When I found out I was pregnant, I was terrified. Not because of the baby. Because of your world, your family, your name. The kind of power that can smile at you in public and bury you in private." Kwame's eyes darkened. "My family never touched you." She wheeled toward him. "You are very sure for a man who didn't even know he had a daughter." He went silent. Nia kept going. "I tried to tell you. I called. I emailed. I went to your office twice. The second time your assistant looked me in the eye and told me you were in a strategy meeting and did not wish to be disturbed by personal complications. Jonah." The name flashed in Kwame's mind like a knife. Nia's laugh shook now with old humiliation. "Personal complications. That was what your child was called before she was even born." Kwame looked away for one brief moment, shame searing through him. Then Nia continued, voice lower. "A week later I received a letter. No signature, but it used your private stationery. It said you were sending money out of decency, not love, that you had no place in your future for scandals, that if I cared about my dignity, I would disappear quietly and never force myself into your life again." Kwame stared at her. "That is not my language," he said. "I know that now." The words were soft. That softness carried more pain than accusation. He moved closer slowly, as though approaching a wound. "What did you do with the money?" She lifted her chin. "Burned most of it." His brows rose despite the moment. "I kept enough for a clinic deposit," she said. "The rest I burned because I would rather starve than raise my child on pity." That was Nia, fierce to the point of self-destruction, proud when pride cost too much, a woman who could survive on almost nothing except the conviction that some lines should never be crossed, and he had loved that about her. Maybe he still did. A dangerous silence settled between them before Kwame spoke again. "I received messages too." Her face tightened. "What messages?" "Messages telling me you had chosen someone else, that you were tired of waiting for promises I never intended to fulfill, that my money had bored you because you wanted real access to it, not secret affection and hidden apartments." Nia recoiled as if slapped. "I never said that." "I know. Those 2 words changed something. Not everything, but something." The anger remained. The mistrust remained. Yet beneath them a deeper horror began to take shape, the shared horror of 2 people realizing their lives had not simply fallen apart. They had been taken apart, piece by piece, carefully, intentionally. Nia sank back onto the sofa, suddenly looking exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with the hospital. "So it was all arranged," she whispered. Kwame did not answer immediately because the truth was growing darker even as they named it. Jonah had been too central, too informed, too efficient. He had controlled access, filtered calls, managed schedules, screened visitors, curated what reached Kwame and what did not. But another face entered Kwame's mind almost at once. Layla. Beautiful. Brilliant. Composed Layla, who had entered his life less than a year after Nia vanished, and somehow already knew how to navigate his mother's inner circle, the board's politics, and the vulnerable fractures in his personal life. Layla, who disliked surprises. Layla, who had called him 3 times this morning. Layla, who had gone cold the instant he cancelled their engagement dinner the night before. His expression must have changed because Naya narrowed her eyes. What? Kwame shook his head. Not yet. What does that mean? It means I need proof before I say names out loud. Nia stood again immediately. No. No more shadows. No more half-truths. If someone did this, I'm done being protected by silence. Kwame met her gaze. And I'm done letting rage outrun evidence. She took 1 step toward him. Easy for you. You still have power. And you think that means I trust it? He snapped. The words came sharper than intended. Nia went still. He exhaled hard and lowered his voice. Power didn't save me from this. No, she said. It just made sure you survived it more comfortably. He had no defense against that. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then from down the hall, Amara's laughter rang out bright, clear, astonishingly pure. Both adults turned instinctively toward the sound. That was the cruelest part of all innocence still existed in the middle of the wreckage. Naya spoke without looking at him. She has asthma. Kwame turned back. What, Amara? She has mild asthma. Dust makes it worse. So does stress. She likes her bread toasted too dark, she hates loud blenders, and she sleeps better if someone hums instead of sings. She gets a rash from cheap laundry soap. She likes counting red cars. And when she's scared, she pretends she's not. Each sentence landed like a record of time he had not lived. Kwame listened in silence, each detail a small grief. Nia's eyes finally met his again. You want to know what hurts? She asked quietly. It isn't only that you weren't there. It's that now you can walk in, look at her face, and call yourself her father because blood says so. But fatherhood isn't a discovery. It's a presence. The truth of that struck him so cleanly, it left no room for pride. You're right, he said. She had been ready to fight. Those 3 words disarmed her more than anger would have. Kwame continued, voice steady. I am not asking you to trust me because of blood. I am saying I will prove what kind of man I am now. Nia held his gaze, searching for arrogance, manipulation, entitlement. Whatever she saw, it was not those things. Still, she said, and if I decide you are too late, a muscle moved in his jaw, then I will still protect her. The answer came instantly, no hesitation, no bargaining. Nia looked away first. From the hallway, little footsteps approached. Amara reappeared holding a plate of mango slices with both hands beaming as though she had returned to a celebration rather than a battlefield. Sade says I can have 3 more. Neither adult answered quickly enough. Amara's smile faded a little. Then she looked at them closely and asked in a small voice, Why do you both look sad when you look at me? The question hung in the room, devastating in its innocence. Nia closed her eyes briefly. Kwame felt something inside him shift from confusion into something much harder, much colder, much more dangerous. Because this was no longer about his pain, or Nia's pain, or even the years stolen from them. It was about a child who had learned to read sorrow in adult faces before she had learned to trust kindness. And someone had done that to her. Kwame looked at Nia, and for the first time since she arrived, they stood not as former lovers or wounded strangers, but as two people facing the same enemy. "I'm going to find out who did this," he said. Naya's fingers tightened around the edge of the plate as she took it from Amara. Then she answered low and firm, "You had better, because this time, I'm not the one who will disappear." By midday, the apartment no longer felt like a hiding place. It felt like the eye of a storm. Phones kept vibrating. Messages kept piling up. 3 missed calls from Layla became 7. Jonah sent 2 careful texts, then a third, with false concern threaded so neatly through the words that Kwame almost admired the performance. "Sir, the board is asking for confirmation regarding tonight's engagement dinner. Also, your mother has called twice. She says it is urgent. Please let me know if everything is all right." Everything. Kwame stared at that word for a long moment, then locked his phone and set it face down on the table. Nothing was all right. In the bedroom at the far end of the apartment, Nia was trying to make Amara rest. The child had been brave all morning, too brave in the way frightened children sometimes become when they sense the adults around them are close to breaking. She had asked fewer questions than any 5-year-old should. She had smiled too often. She had even offered Saad half a mango slice so nobody gets sad alone. That sentence had nearly undone Nia. Kwame stood in the kitchen with Sade, listening to the muted hush of the apartment. "She is overheating?" Sade said quietly, rinsing a cloth under cool water. "Not badly, but the child is carrying more stress than her body can hide." Kwame looked toward the hall. "Should we call a doctor?" Sade shut off the tap and turned to him. "A doctor, yes, but not one attached to your name." He nodded. "Agreed." And the mother Kwame's face hardened slightly. "What about her?" "She is holding herself together with force alone," Sade replied. That kind of strength breaks suddenly. He knew she was right. Nia had barely eaten. She had barely sat still. Her eyes kept scanning doors and windows as if danger were a smell only she could detect. Every time Amara coughed, her whole body tensed. Kwame had spent years around polished women who hid their intentions with elegance. Nia was not elegant today. She was raw survival. A woman stretched thin by fear, poverty, memory, and the terrible discipline of motherhood without support. And he had not been there. He turned as footsteps approached. Nia stepped into the kitchen carrying Amara in her arms. The child's head lay against her shoulder, one flushed cheek pressed into Nia's collarbone. Her breathing was not ragged, but it was warmer than it should have been. "She has a fever," Nia said. Kwame moved forward immediately. "How high? I don't know yet." Her voice was controlled, but barely. "She's had this before after a shock. Sometimes stress pushes it up fast." Sade reached for the thermometer. Nia allowed it, though, reluctantly, as if every borrowed kindness required calculation. A minute later, Sade read the number and frowned. Mild, but rising. Nia shut her eyes briefly. Kwame was already making the decision. "We take her to a private pediatric clinic." "No." The answer came so fast it startled even him. Nia held Amara tighter. "No hospitals, no public intake, no systems. It won't be public. You cannot promise that." "I can." She laughed bitterly. "You used to promise a lot." The words struck, but he did not step back. "This is not about us. It is always about us when your world enters the room." For a second, anger flashed across his face, but he swallowed it. Before either could say more, Amara stirred and whimpered. "Mama." Nia kissed her forehead instantly. "I'm here." The child's eyes opened halfway. They looked glassy now. Then she turned weakly toward Kwame and whispered, "Come, man." He crouched beside them. "I'm here too." She blinked as if trying to focus. "My chest feels funny." That ended the argument. 20 minutes later, they were in the underground parking level, moving fast. Kwame had called in a pediatric specialist through one of his quietest channels. An older doctor who owed loyalty to no corporate network, no family connection, and certainly no gossip machine. The clinic was discreet, expensive, and used to handling people who valued silence more than comfort. Amara lay against Nia in the back seat. Kwame sat beside them rather than in front. He noticed everything now. The way Nia counted each breath unconsciously. The inhaler in her bag worn at the edges. The tiny socks on Amara's feet darned by hand where the heels had thinned. The child's rabbit stitched repeatedly along one ear. Evidence everywhere. Evidence of a life built not on abundance, but on patching what should not have been left to tear. At the clinic, the doctor met them personally. No waiting room, no paperwork at the desk, no names spoken aloud. The examination room was softly lit, painted with faded animals and clouds. It should have felt comforting. Instead, it only made the truth crueler. A child like Amara should have known places like this without fear. But she clung to Nia the moment the stethoscope appeared. "It's all right," the doctor murmured. "She hates cold metal," Nia said automatically. The doctor paused, then warmed the stethoscope in his palm first. Amara let him listen after that. Kwame stood near the wall, hands in his pockets, watching in silence. After the examination, the doctor straightened. "Stress response," he said. "Mild fever. Tight chest, but not dangerous if treated early. She needs calm fluids rest and to stay somewhere secure for a few days." Secure. The word settled heavily. Nia asked 3 sharp questions in a row about symptoms, dosage, warning signs. The doctor answered each one with professional patience. Kwame said nothing until medication had been prepared, and the child was finally drifting into easier sleep in her mother's lap. Then he turned to the doctor. "I need a DNA test." Nia's head snapped up. "No." Kwame met her glare. "It's already obvious." "Then why do you need a test?" "Because obvious isn't enough when enemies are hiding in paperwork and lies." The doctor looked from one to the other, wisely silent. Nia stood slowly with Amara in her arms, eyes blazing now, despite her exhaustion. "You think I would lie about this? I think someone has lied about everything else." Her face changed, not because she accepted the logic, but because part of her feared it too. Kwame stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Listen to me. I am not asking to humiliate you. I am asking to protect her." Nia held his gaze. "You want legal proof?" "Yes. So you can claim her, so no one can take her." That answer stopped her. He continued, each word measured. "If whoever manipulated our past is still active, then the moment they suspect the truth, this child becomes a target. Not just emotionally, legally, publicly, maybe worse. I need a chain of proof nobody can tamper with." Nia's eyes filled, but not with softness. "With war. You think I haven't spent 5 years protecting her from exactly that? I think you have," he said. "Alone." The last word landed between them with unbearable force. Nia looked away first. Amara shifted against her shoulder with a sleepy cough. The doctor finally spoke, gently. "The test can be done with minimal distress. It doesn't change maternal rights. It simply establishes fact." Nia gave a hollow laugh. "Fact? As if facts have ever protected women like me." No one answered because no one could honestly contradict her. For a long time, she stood in silence, torn between pride, fear, memory, and the practical terror of what might happen if she refused. Then she looked down at her daughter. Amara, half asleep, whispered. Mama Nia brushed the child's hair back and closed her eyes. When she opened them again, something in her had hardened into a painful kind of surrender. "Do it," she said. Kwame exhaled once, slowly. The sample collection took only minutes. A swab from Amara. A swab from Kwame. The doctor sealed everything personally documented chain of custody and promised preliminary results by nightfall through a private courier. On the drive back, nobody spoke. The city rolled by outside vendors under torn umbrellas, school children splashing around muddy curbs, men in business shirts barking into phones, women balancing baskets and babies, and fatigue with impossible grace. Nairobi moved as it always moved, fast, indifferent, alive. Inside the SUV, time thickened. Amara slept through most of the ride, fever easing. Nia kept one hand on her and the other wrapped around the inhaler inside her bag. Kwame looked out the window and thought of all the years that could not be reclaimed, even if the result came back exactly as he already knew it would. He remembered university mornings with Nia, her stubborn laugh, her refusal to let him pay for everything, the way she used to say, "You don't solve guilt with gifts, Kwame. You solve it with character." At the time he had thought she was teasing him. Now he wondered if she had been warning him. Back at the apartment, the waiting began. It was worse than any board vote, any acquisition, any crisis communication war room. Those battles involved strategy. This involved a truth that could shatter him, no matter how it landed. At 6:40 in the evening, the courier arrived. Sade took the envelope. No one opened it immediately. Amara was asleep in the guest room now, finally breathing steadily. The apartment lights were dim. Rain had started again, tapping against the high windows like nervous fingers. Nia stood near the dining table, pale and rigid. Kwame took the envelope from Sade. For the first time in years, his hands were not steady. He opened it, read once, then again. His vision blurred for a second. Nia's voice came low and sharp. "Say it." Kwame lifted his eyes to hers. He could not speak immediately. The words caught in a throat that had negotiated billion-dollar deals without trembling, yet now betrayed him completely. Finally, hoarse and stripped bare, he said, "Probability of paternity, 99.99%. The room disappeared into silence. Nia shut her eyes. A tear slipped down her face, not from surprise, but from the cruel finality of being proven right after years of suffering alone. Kwame stared at the paper as if it were both miracle and indictment. His daughter. His child. Not maybe. Not almost. His. A strange sound left him, then half laugh, half broken breath. He turned away, pressing a hand over his mouth as grief crashed through him in waves too large to hide. Nia watched him, and for the first time since their reunion, the anger in her face was joined by something else. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But recognition. Because now he was no longer merely the man who had not been there. He was also the man realizing exactly what had been stolen from him. Then his phone vibrated on the table. A message preview flashed across the screen from an unknown number forwarded through a private archive server. His investigator had just unlocked, recovered deleted records found. Fake messages originated from internal executive access. More soon. Kwame lifted his head slowly. Nia saw his expression change. "What is it?" He looked at her eyes, darkening into something cold and lethal. "The first lie," he said, "just found a name." The apartment fell into a silence so complete that even the rain seemed to hesitate against the glass. Kwame stood motionless beside the dining table, the DNA report still open in one hand, his phone glowing in the other. Across from him, Nia looked as if she were balancing on the edge of two cliffs at once. One was grief, the other was vindication, and neither offered rest. The first lie just found a name. Her voice came out low and tight. What name? Kwame did not answer immediately. He reread to the investigator's message, jaw hardening with every second. Recovered deleted records found. Fake messages originated from internal executive access. Device trail points first to Jonah Mbele's credentials. Secondary cross-access likely. Need 1 more hour for confirmation. Jonah. Not just suspicion anymore. Not intuition. Not an old bitterness seeking a target. Evidence. Nia watched the shift in his face and understood enough to turn cold. It was your assistant. Kwame finally lifted his eyes to hers. His credentials were used? Used, she gave a short, disbelieving laugh. You still protect him with grammar. I protect facts, he said. After 6 years, the question hit exactly where it was meant to. He set both the DNA report and the phone down with deliberate care, as if any sudden movement might make his rage harder to contain. I am done protecting anyone, he said. Nia folded her arms, but it was no longer only defensiveness. It was restraint, her own, not his. Then say what you know. Kwame nodded once. Jonah handled my communications back then. Calls, messages, visitor access scheduling. Nobody reached me without passing through him. His voice lowered. And there may be a second person involved. Nia's eyes narrowed. Your fiancé? He looked at her sharply. That obvious, she asked. Yes. She gave a bitter smile. Women like me survive by reading rooms quickly. If there is a polished woman in your life now and she's been calling all day while you hide a child, then, yes, it's obvious. Kwame could not deny it. Layla had been too composed for too long, too interested in timelines, inheritances, alliances, perception. Their engagement had made strategic sense. That should have been his first warning. Love had not brought her close. Convenience had. And maybe something darker than convenience had kept her there. From down the hall, Amara coughed once in her sleep. Nia turned instantly. That reflex did something to Kwame every time he saw it. The speed, the instinct, the total absence of calculation. 5 years had shaped her around the child so completely that even anger had to wait behind motherhood. She needs to rest, Nia said quietly. She will. Nia looked back at him. Then don't bring war into the room unless you're ready to finish it. A strange, humorless smile touched his mouth. Nia. I was born into war wearing cufflinks. That would once have made her roll her eyes. Tonight, it only made her sad. A knock sounded softly at the door. Sade entered with tea no one wanted, and the kind of expression older women wore when they had already guessed more than they had been told. The investigator is downstairs, she said. He says it should be in person. Kwame glanced at the clock. Bring him up. Nia immediately straightened. No. Kwame turned. No, I'm not sitting in another room while men trade the story of my life like it belongs to them. The words were flint. He held her gaze for a beat, then nodded. You stay. That surprised her, though she hid it quickly. 5 minutes later, the investigator entered a lean man in his 50s with iron-grey hair, quiet shoes, and the alert stillness of someone who trusted neither elevators nor people. His name was Temba. He greeted Kwame with a nod, then took in Nia with one careful look that told her he already knew exactly who she was. He laid a slim file on the table. I moved faster than I normally would, Temba said, because once I saw the old access logs I understood the urgency. Kwame remained standing. Talk. Temba opened the file. 6 years ago, several outgoing messages from your private number were sent during a period when your phone was physically logged in your office safe. He slid out printed records. You did not send them. Nia closed her eyes briefly. Kwame's face did not change, but the muscle in his jaw ticked once. Simultaneously, Temba continued incoming calls and emails from Nia Okoro were intercepted, deleted, or rerouted before reaching you. Visitor requests were marked as resolved. One office camera from that period shows her arriving at reception, while Jonah personally instructed staff to deny access. Nia inhaled sharply. Kwame said nothing. That silence was more dangerous than shouting. Temba placed another page on the table. The envelope delivered to Ms. Okoro was drawn from executive stationery secured through internal inventory. That sign-out also traces back to Jonah's clearance. Only Jonah Kwame asked. Temba paused. There's more. He withdrew one final document, newer, cleaner, more recent. This is where your current problem begins. Over the last 8 months, Jonah's access credentials were repeatedly paired with after-hours entries into the archive suite and private family office. On 4 of those occasions, Layla Bako's personal assistant badge appears in the adjacent log within minutes. The room went still. Nia looked at Kwame. So they know each other well. Too well, Temba said before Kwame could answer. And there is financial overlap. He slid a bank summary forward. 3 shell transfers, 2 property holds, a consulting retainer that made no business sense unless the business was deception. Kwame stared at the numbers. He had been used to fund the machinery that stole his own family from him. A dark laugh escaped him. Nia's voice turned sharp. You think this is funny? No, he said, lifting his head. I think this is efficient, cruel, calculated, expensive. His eyes went colder, which means it lasted because it was useful. Temba nodded slowly. I believe so. Kwame paced once toward the window, then back. Why now? He asked. Why keep manipulating records all these years unless they were afraid something would resurface? Temba answered carefully. Because children become visible. School records, medical claims, rental histories. If someone knew or suspected the child existed, they may have been watching the mother long before you were. Nia's face lost color. The men who followed us, she whispered. Kwame turned instantly. Tell him everything. For the next 10 minutes, Nia described what she had never fully spoken aloud, unfamiliar men near the clinic footsteps that matched hers twice in the market, a motorbike that paused too often outside Amara's school lane, a woman at the pharmacy who asked too many questions about emergency medication. She had thought she was being paranoid. Then she had realized paranoia did not leave matching footprints. Temba listened without interruption. When she finished, he said, That is coordinated surveillance. Nia's hands clenched into fists. Kwame's voice came out flat. And the men yesterday? Still tracing, Temba said, but if the child overheard something and ran, that may have accelerated whatever plan was already underway. At that, Nia looked toward the hall where Amara slept. Her whole body changed. Not weaker, more dangerous. She heard them. Nia said slowly. In the stairwell outside our room. One of them said, once the boss signs, the woman and the kid disappear from the city. I thought they meant eviction. I thought... Her voice broke. She swallowed hard. I thought poor people always imagine the worst because life trains them to. Temba looked at Kwame. Did you plan to sign anything significant? Kwame did not answer for half a second. Then he understood. The prenuptial asset consolidation. Nia stared. What? He turned to her, expression grim. Layla wanted the engagement formalized this week, with a restructuring clause tied to future heirs and family trusts. The meaning landed slowly, then all at once. If Kwame had married Layla with no recognized child from a previous relationship, the map of power inheritance, public legitimacy, and internal control would have shifted cleanly in her favor. Amara was not just an inconvenience, she was an obstacle. The rage that moved through the room after that had no sound at all. Nia stepped back as though the air itself had become poisonous. They would have erased her. Kwame's eyes met hers. Not while I breathe. Yet they almost did. She shot back, tears burning now. They almost did while you were planning an engagement dinner. He absorbed that blow without defense, because it was deserved. Temba cleared his throat softly. There is one more complication. Neither of them liked those words. What now? Kwame asked. Jonah has already left his apartment. Layla cancelled tonight's event before the board could publicly confirm it. And one of the shell accounts emptied 2 hours ago. Kwame went still. They know, he said. Temba nodded. At least enough to panic. For one moment, old instinct tempted Kwame toward immediate force security teams' warrants through political channels, frozen assets, closed roads, loud power used louder still. But then he looked down the hall. at the child asleep in the next room, at the woman standing barefoot in his apartment, bruised and furious, and somehow still upright after 6 years of theft. This could not be a business response. This had to be precise. "Listen carefully," he said. Temba straightened. "Nobody outside this room learns the DNA result. Nobody outside this room learns where Amara is. You leak one controlled piece of false information instead." Nia looked at him sharply. "What information?" Kwame's eyes darkened with strategy. "That Amara is safe," he said, "but not with me." Temba understood immediately. "A lure." "Yes." Nia stared at him. "You want them to move. I want them to believe they still have time." She hated that the idea made sense. He could see it in her face. "And if they come for me instead?" she asked. "They won't," Kwame said. "You sound very sure." His answer was quiet. "Because from this moment on they're coming through me." That was the first time all night Nia truly looked at him, not as the man who had failed her, but as the man he might become under pressure. Not redeemed, not forgiven, but awake. Temba began gathering the papers. "I'll set the false trail." "Do it," Kwame said, "and put eyes on Jonah Layla and every transport exit tied to their known accounts." When the investigator left, silence returned. It was different now, not helpless, armed. Nia stood near the table staring at the copies of the old lies that had shaped 6 years of suffering. Then she looked up at Kwame. "If this goes wrong," she said, voice low and shaking, "I lose her." Kwame crossed the room and stopped just short of touching her. "No," he said. "If this goes wrong, we both lose her." The word hung there. We. Not polished, not romantic, not repaired, but real. And for the first time since she had walked back into his life, Nia did not reject it. She only whispered with the fury of a mother and the grief of a woman who had been hunted too long. Then let them come. The next morning began in unnatural quiet. No rain struck the windows. No phones rang. No one knocked. Nairobi glowed beneath a pale wash of early sunlight, its usual chaos softened by altitude and distance, as if the city itself had stepped back to watch what would happen inside the apartment. For the first time since Amara had climbed into his car, Kwame Dlamini felt something more dangerous than shock. He felt responsibility settling into shape. Not the abstract kind he wore so easily in public, the kind measured in payrolls, signatures, acquisitions, and speeches about leadership. This was smaller, sharper, more humiliating. It lived in tiny routines. Medicine at the right hour. Warm water instead of cold. Curtains half open because too much light made a frightened child feel exposed. Toast cut into squares, not triangles, because triangles looked angry according to Amara. No boardroom had ever trained him for that. He stood in the kitchen at 7 in the morning, staring at 2 slices of bread in a polished chrome toaster, as if they were a negotiation tactic refusing to reveal themselves. Sade leaned against the counter, arms folded, saying nothing at first. Kwame broke the silence. She said darker than normal. She did. How dark, Sade watched him with open amusement now. Burnt enough to crunch. Not burnt enough to cry. He glanced at her. That is not a useful measurement. Children rarely are. A minute later the toast popped up too pale. Kwame frowned. Sade did not rescue him. He pushed it back down. On the second attempt, it came out charred at the edges. Sade lifted one brow. That one may be too close to revenge. Before Kwame could respond, a tiny voice came from the doorway. That one looks right. He turned. Amara stood there in an oversized cotton shirt that had once belonged to him and now reached almost to her ankles. Her fever had broken in the night. Her face still looked a little tired, but color had returned to her cheeks. One hand held the battered stuffed rabbit. The other rubbed sleep from her eye. Behind her, Nia froze in the hallway. She had clearly followed the child, intending to intervene if needed, Her hair was tied back loosely. She wore one of Saad's clean dresses, simple and soft, but there was nothing soft in the way her body remained slightly braced, as if even mourning could betray her. Amara padded into the kitchen and pointed at the toast. "Mama makes it like that when she's busy." Something flickered across Naya's face, not quite embarrassment, not quite sadness. "Only because our toaster is old," she said. Amara looked from the bread to Kwame. "Do rich people's toast taste different?" Kwame almost answered with something polished. Instead, he said, "Mine usually comes from someone else." Amara considered that very seriously, then nodded as if filing away a strange fact about the habits of the wealthy. Nia moved forward. "You didn't need to do this." Kwame took the toast out carefully. "I know." The answer caught her off guard. The answer. There were many things she expected from him. Control, pride, perhaps. Guilt dressed as charm. Simple willingness was not one of them. Amara climbed onto a chair and watched with fascinated intensity as he spread butter. "You're doing it wrong," she declared. Kwame paused. Nia pressed her lips together, and Sade turned away to hide a smile. How, he asked. "You have to push it into the corners. The corners get lonely." The rabbit dangled from her elbow as she demonstrated with complete authority. Kwame obeyed. Something about the sight this feared CEO taking toast instructions from a 5-year-old should have been absurd. But when Nia looked up and saw his face, it wasn't absurd at all. It was earnest. Dangerously earnest. That frightened her more than arrogance would have. Because arrogance she knew how to fight. Earnestness could get through cracks she had spent years sealing shut. Breakfast happened in uneven peace. Amara talked. Sade moved quietly in the background. Kwame listened more than he spoke, which surprised everyone, perhaps even himself. He learned that Amara counted red cars when she was nervous, that she hated loud blenders, that she once named a stray cat chairman because it always looked disappointed in others. Naya corrected none of this. She watched. Every time Amara laughed, Nia softened by instinct. Every time Kwame answered the child gently, something in Nia's face tightened not from anger, but from resistance. She had spent 5 years building a world in which disappointment came early, clearly, and without disguise. Now the child was beginning to lean toward her father without yet knowing what father meant. That was dangerous. After breakfast, Amara discovered the apartment's floor-to-ceiling windows and gasped at the city below. "It looks like toy houses." Kwame moved beside her. "From up here, maybe. Do you live in the sky now?" She turned to him. "Then why is your house so high?" He thought about saying something clever. Instead, he said, "Maybe I got used to being far away." Amara accepted the answer. Children often accepted truths adults disguised as jokes. Nia did not. Her eyes lifted sharply to his face, and for the first time that morning she saw fatigue there. Not physical fatigue, the deeper kind, the kind that arrived when a person had begun telling themselves fewer lies. By noon, Temba had sent an update. No direct moves yet. The false trail had spread cleanly. Layla's office had quietly inquired about a private rental outside the city. Jonah had contacted 2 old security contractors and deleted the calls immediately afterward. They were preparing. Kwame read the message in silence, then locked his phone before Amara could notice the change in his face. "Bad news?" Nia asked once the child wandered into the sitting room with crayons Sade had found. "Expected news. That means bad." He looked at her. "It means they're nervous. And nervous people are dangerous." "Yes?" She folded her arms. "Then why are you calm?" He gave a humorless half-smile. "I'm not calm. I'm focused." That answer unsettled her because she believed it. He was not the man from years ago, the brilliant, fast-moving heir who thought intelligence alone could outmaneuver cruelty. This version had edges sharpened by loss. And for once, the loss had become personal enough to matter. Amara looked up from the rug. Will you both stop using your war voices? Silence. Then, to Nia's surprise, Kwame walked over and sat on the rug opposite the child. Just sat. No concern for the tailored trousers. No hesitation. No performance. Amara blinked at him. You can sit on floors? She asked. He glanced around as if checking. It appears so. She giggled. Nia hated how that sound changed the room. Amara pushed a crayon toward him. Draw. I'm not good at drawing. That's okay. I'm not good at rich houses. Kwame took the crayon. What should I draw? She thought carefully. A lion wearing a tie. Sade made an undignified sound that might have been a laugh disguised as a cough. Kwame, to his credit, drew the lion. It was terrible. Amara gasped in delight anyway. Mama, look, he made it grumpy. Nia came closer despite herself. She looked down at the page, and against her will, a small smile escaped. It does look grumpy. Kwame glanced up. It's a lion in a tie. Dignity was never an option. For one suspended second, the old rhythm between them flickered back. Not romance, not ease, but the strange spark they had once shared when both were younger and less wounded. Then Nia's face closed again. She stood too quickly. I need air. Kwame rose at once. There's a secure balcony. She looked at him sharply. I know how balconies work. He let the rebuke land. Outside, the city wind moved gently through the railing. Nia gripped the metal with both hands and stared down. Behind her, the glass door opened after a moment. She did not turn. I said I needed air, and I said nothing. He stopped several feet away. For a while, that was how they stood. Not together, not apart. Finally, Nia spoke. She likes you. Kwame did not answer lightly. I know. She likes people too quickly when they are kind. That is not a flaw. It is when kindness leaves. The words hung there. Kwame looked at the skyline. Do you think I don't understand that I think you are only beginning to? He accepted that. Nia exhaled shakily. You can't come into her life like this, warm breakfast crayon's gentle voice, and then disappear when it becomes inconvenient. You don't get to be extraordinary for 3 days and vanish for the rest of her childhood. He turned toward her fully now. I am not visiting, he said. She finally looked at him. There was no charm in his face, no seductive softness, no entitled certainty, only something far more serious. Commitment, perhaps, or the beginning of it. Nia's expression tightened. You say that now. I will say it when she is sick. I will say it when she is angry. I will say it when she is 15 and hates everything I represent. I will say it when being her father costs me comfort, reputation, leverage, sleep time, and whatever else I used to think mattered more. She stared. The wind moved a loose strand of hair across her cheek. He continued quieter. I cannot undo 5 years. I cannot ask forgiveness for time I did not know was being stolen. But I can decide what I am from this point forward. Nia's eyes burned. You talk like a man making a promise to himself. Maybe I am. Below them, a siren wailed somewhere far away. Inside, Amara's voice carried faintly through the glass. Where'd the lion go? Neither adult moved immediately. Nia looked back toward the child's voice, and when she spoke again, it was with painful honesty. I don't know how to let her need you. Kwame's answer came without hesitation. Then don't. Let me earn it. The simplicity of that response struck deeper than any grand declaration could have. No demands, no legal language, no wounded masculine pride, just a willingness to be tested. Nia lowered her eyes. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. She wakes from nightmares around 2 in the morning. If someone is there before she fully opens her eyes, she calms faster. Kwame understood what she was giving him. Not trust. Instructions. A small door not yet opened but no longer bolted. He nodded. All right. She hates thunder but pretends she doesn't. All right. And if she asks whether you're staying? This time he answered before she finished. I'll tell her the truth. Nia looked up again. Which truth? Kwame held her gaze steadily. That I am here, and I am not leaving because things became difficult. For the first time since the child climbed into his car, Nia did not argue. She did not soften either, but she stood beside him on the balcony, silent, watching the city, while inside their daughter laughed over a badly drawn lion in a necktie. And in that fragile silence, something changed. Not the past, never the past, but the shape of the future. Because fatherhood had finally reached Kwame not as blood, not as proof, not as legal fact, but as a test. And for the first time in his life, he wanted to pass it more than he wanted to win anything else. The kidnapping happened in less than 90 seconds. Later, Kwame would replay every second of it with the cruelty of a man searching for the exact moment fate might have been interrupted. He would remember the angle of the elevator light, the soft chiming of the security panel, the plate of sliced pears Sade had left untouched on the counter, the way Amara had been laughing just moments before because she had decided the grumpy lion needed a tiny golden crown. He would remember all of it, because disaster is never content with arriving alone. It always steals the ordinary things, too. That afternoon had begun almost gently. Amara's fever was gone. She had eaten well. She had napped with her rabbit tucked beneath her chin, and when she woke, she demanded that Sade judge a drawing contest between her Kwame and Mama, if Mama stops looking worried for 1 minute. Nia had almost smiled at that. Almost. Temba had sent another update just after lunch. Jonah's movements were erratic. Layla had cancelled 2 meetings and dismissed 3 staff members early, and a vehicle tied to one of the shell accounts had been seen near a private road leading out of the city. They're planning something, Nia said immediately. Kwame, reading the message near the window, answered without looking up. Yes. That is not enough of an answer. It is the only honest one. She turned from the sofa where Amara was colouring and stepped toward him. Then say the rest. Kwame lowered the phone. They know pressure is closing in. That means one of 2 things. They run or they strike. Nia's face drained slightly. Then why are we still here? Because this is the safest location I control. Her laugh was sharp. You control it. That's not the same as it being safe. Before he could answer, Amara looked up from the carpet. Why are you both using the scary voices again? The room went still. Nia crossed back immediately and knelt beside her daughter. We're just talking, baby. Amara frowned. No. Talking is softer. Kwame watched the child's small face and felt that same humiliating sting he had felt before adults had taught her to hear danger too well. He crouched beside them. Would you like to show me the lion's crown now? Amara brightened instantly, her fear dissolving with the speed only children possess. Yes, but you can't laugh because kings are serious. Of course, he said gravely. I would never insult a serious lion king. That won him a grin. For the next half hour, the apartment seemed to exhale. Saad made tea. Nia sat closer to Amara than before, one hand always near the child's shoulder, but she was calmer. Kwame even allowed himself to think they might get through the afternoon without escalation. That was his mistake. At 4:17, the lights flickered. Once, twice, then steadied. Kwame's head lifted instantly. Nia saw his face and stood. What is it? This building has backup systems. Amara looked up. Did the Lion King do that? No, Kwame said quietly. His phone was already in his hand. He dialed downstairs security. No answer. He dialed Temba. No answer. Then the apartment's smart panel emitted a soft, innocent chime. Guest access override. Kwame's blood turned cold. Everyone away from the door, he said. Nia did not ask questions this time. She grabbed Amara so fast the child barely had time to clutch the rabbit properly before being lifted. Sade moved too, her face losing all softness. A second chime. Then the front door began unlocking. Kwame crossed the room in 3 long strides and slammed the manual deadbolt into place just as the handle jerked from the other side. Once. Twice. Then harder. Amara screamed. Nia turned away instinctively, shielding the child's face against her neck. "Backroom," Kwame ordered. No, Nia shot back. "Not unless you come, too." The handle rattled violently again. A male voice called through the door, falsely calm. "Mr. Dlamini security system's fault. Please step back." Kwame's expression became something lethal. "That is not building staff." Sade had already reached the hall closet and pulled out the emergency panic case he kept there. Old habits from a world where wealth attracted precision threats. Inside were a flashlight, a private phone, 2 coded keycards, and a compact legal firearm. Nia saw the gun, and all the color vanished from her face. Kwame took it anyway, not to brandish, to end debate. The voice outside changed. "Open the door now." Then came a heavy impact. The frame groaned. Amara began crying, in full, now tiny body shaking against Nia. Mama Kwame turned to Sade. "Take them through the service corridor." Sade nodded instantly. Nia didn't move. "No." The word cracked out of her. Kwame faced her. "There's a secondary exit through the laundry shaft access. It leads to the maintenance stairwell. And you..." "I'll slow them down." "No." He stepped closer. The pounding on the door grew louder, wood splintering now near the lock. "Nia, listen to me. I am done running while men decide everything. This is not deciding. This is survival." Her eyes burned. "You think I don't know the difference?" Another crash shook the apartment. Amara sobbed louder. That sound broke them both out of the argument. Kwame lowered his voice until it cut through the chaos. "Take her." Nia stared at him with a hatred that was not truly for him, but for every helpless second life had ever forced on her. Then the deadbolt split. Sade shouted, "Now they moved." Kwame shoved the kitchen island hard enough to wedge it partly toward the entry line, buying seconds. Sade yanked open the hidden service panel near the pantry. Nia ducked through with Amara in her arms, just as the front door burst inward. 3 men, not uniformed, not subtle. One saw Kwame and lunged. Kwame fired once into the ceiling. The blast stunned the room into one sharp instant of shock. "Next one won't miss," he said. The lead man hesitated just enough. Seconds. Only seconds. Kwame backed toward the pantry entrance, then slammed the service panel shut from his side and dropped the secondary latch. Hands pounded almost immediately against the wood. He turned and ran down the narrow service corridor. Ahead, Nia clutched Amara while Sade led them through the dim stairwell. The child's crying echoed off the concrete. Kwame's heart hammered, but his mind was cold now, mapping exits, timings, blind turns. On the 3rd landing, his secure phone vibrated. "Temba," Kwame answered while moving. "Speak." "They breached early," Hemba said. "I intercepted a message too late." "Get out now. Garage compromised. Use street exit north side." Kwame cut the call. Down another flight. Out through a metal service door into the alley behind the building. Air hit them hard, hotter than expected, full of exhaust and late afternoon city noise. A black van idled at the far end of the lane. Kwame saw it first. Back too late. A side door slid open. Another man stepped out. Nia spun, trying to shield Amara, but panic scattered the movement. Amara slipped not from her mother's arms entirely, but enough for chaos to take shape. One attacker grabbed for the child. Nia screamed and fought like something feral, nails and elbows and raw terror. Kwame reached them in 2 strides and slammed the man into the van frame so hard, metal rang. But in that same fractured second, the rear attacker tore Amara free. The sound the child made was not a scream at first. It was pure disbelief. Then it became terror. Mama. Everything after that moved too fast and too slowly all at once. Nia launched herself forward. Kwame caught another attacker by the collar. Sade shouted for help. The van door slammed. Tires screamed. And just like that, the vehicle shot out of the alley with Amara inside. For one heartbeat, the world stopped. Then Nia made a sound Kwame would never forget for the rest of his life. It was not human in any civilized sense. It was the sound of a mother being ripped open. She ran after the van until her legs gave out. Kwame ran farther, memorizing plate fragments, route angle traffic turn. Futile. The van was gone. When he turned back, Nia was on the asphalt, shaking so hard she could barely breathe. "My baby," she kept whispering. "My baby, my baby, my baby." Kwame dropped to his knees in front of her. "We will get her back." She struck his chest with both fists. "This is your world," she screamed. "Your enemies, your traps, your games. This is your world." He took the blows without stopping her. "You said she was safe, you said." Her voice shattered completely. Kwame grabbed her wrists, not roughly but firmly enough to anchor her. "Nia." She was beyond hearing. "Naya." Her eyes finally focused, wild and drowning. And then something happened that had not happened once. In all the years since he had known her. She broke. Not angrily, not proudly, completely. They threatened me before she gasped. Years ago, when I was pregnant. Kwame froze. Nia's face crumpled as memory ripped through her. "I never told you because I thought you sent them. I thought it came from your family, from your people, from your silence. But they came to me." Her words tumbled out between sobs. "Two men. Outside the clinic. They said if I ever tried to return to you, if I ever used your name, if I ever claimed anything for the baby, my child would grow up hunted. Or not grow up at all." Kwame stared at her. The city noise faded. "You were threatened," he said hoarsely. She nodded frantically, broken by the confession. "That's why I disappeared. Not just because of the letter, not just because I thought you abandoned me. I was pregnant and alone and terrified, and they knew it. They knew exactly how to frighten me." The truth struck him with such force he nearly reeled. All these years he had believed the worst theft was time. It wasn't. It was fear. Someone had built 6 years of Nia's life out of fear. Forced her to carry motherhood like a hunted thing. Forced Amara to grow under shadows she never deserved. Kwame stood slowly. His face had changed. Nia saw it. No grief now. No confusion. Only purpose sharpened into something terrifyingly calm. His phone rang again. "Temba." Kwame answered without taking his eyes off the road where the van had vanished. "I have a lead," Temba said. Traffic camera caught the vehicle switching plates near Industrial Road. It's heading toward an old logistics warehouse once used by one of Layla's shell contractors. Kwame's voice dropped into a register that felt colder than rage. "Send me everything." Nia forced herself upright, tears still streaming down her face. "I'm coming." Kwame turned to her. "Yes," he said, not because he wanted to protect her from the truth, because the truth already belonged to her. And because there were some roads a mother had earned the right to walk no matter how dark they became. As sirens began rising faintly in the distance, Kwame looked toward the city where his daughter had disappeared, and understood one final thing with brutal clarity. This was no longer a scandal to uncover, no longer a betrayal to expose. It was a war for a child, and the people who took Amara had just made the worst mistake of their lives. By the time Kwame's convoy reached the warehouse district, dusk had begun bleeding across the city. Industrial Road was a place Nairobi tried not to look at, directly rows of aging logistics buildings, rusted fencing, broken floodlights, and loading docks stained by years of oil rain and neglect. During the day, it pretended to be functional. At night, it became the kind of place where truth could be hidden in concrete and paperwork. Kwame sat in the back of the lead SUV, eyes fixed on the tablet in his hands. Traffic stills, satellite snapshots, building schematics, vehicle entry records from shell companies tied to Layla's assistant and one of Jonah's off-book accounts. Temba had worked with brutal speed, feeding every usable detail into a live file. There was no longer any doubt about the target, a House 14B, former cold storage, privately leased through a contractor no one would question unless they knew exactly where to dig. Nia sat beside him. She had not cried for the last 12 minutes, which frightened him more than if she had. She held Amara's stuffed rabbit in both hands so tightly the seams looked ready to split. Her face was tear-streaked, but still now. Focused. Not calm, never calm. Focused in the way wounded people sometimes become when pain finally narrows into direction. Across from them, Temba spoke into a secure earpiece, while marking probable exits on the screen. Northgate welded, east loading dock active. 2 men outside, maybe 3. Thermal shows movement inside, at least 6 heat signatures total. At least 1 child-sized, Kwame asked. Temba glanced at the feed. Yes. Nia's breath caught, but she did not speak. Kwame leaned forward. Any sign of Layla or Jonah? Not visual yet. But 1 luxury sedan registered to a holding company linked to Layla entered 9 minutes ago. That was enough. Kwame locked the tablet and looked at Nia. You stay behind the second line when we go in. No. He had expected that. This is not negotiable. Her head turned slowly toward him. You negotiated my absence for 6 years without me. Try it again and see what happens. Under any other circumstance, the line might have ignited a different argument. Here in the darkening vehicle, it only revealed the truth she had crossed beyond the point where fear could control her. Kwame held her gaze. I won't let you go in first. Then don't. Her voice was low and raw. But I am not staying outside while my daughter cries for me in there. He wanted to argue. He wanted to be rational. He wanted to force strategy over emotion. But one look at her face ended it. Nia was not asking for permission. She was claiming motherhood, and no decent man stood in front of that without extraordinary reason. Kwame gave 1 short nod. You stay with me. Temba opened his mouth as if to object, then wisely closed it. 3 minutes later, the convoy lights went dead. The vehicles rolled the remaining stretch in darkness, tires whispering over wet pavement. Security men took positions with disciplined silence. No sirens, no shouting, no warning. Kwame had made that decision personally. This was not a raid meant to make headlines. It was a recovery. The first guard outside the east dock barely had time to turn before he was subdued and dragged behind stacked pallets. The second reached for a radio and found Temba's hand at his throat instead. Inside the warehouse smelled of dust, metal, and old coolant. Dim utility lamps cast long, ugly shadows across cracked floors and abandoned containers. A child's cry echoed from somewhere deeper in the building. Nia moved before anyone could stop her. Kwame caught her arm, not harshly but firmly. Not alone. Her eyes flashed. Then from beyond a row of crates came Amara's voice, thin, terrified, unmistakable. Mama! Mama! Everything accelerated. Kwame and 2 men advanced left. Temba flanked right. Nia stayed between them only because Kwame physically kept pace beside her. Then they saw her. Amara sat tied to a metal chair beneath a hanging work light, cheeks wet with tears. Rabbit nowhere in sight. A woman stood several feet away in a cream coat and high heels utterly unsuited to the grime around her. Layla. Even in a warehouse, she looked composed. That was what made her monstrous. Jonah stood to her right, sweating now, one hand jammed inside his jacket, as if bravado could still imitate control. Two more hired men shifted near the back exit. Layla smiled when she saw Kwame. "Finally," she said. "You always did make dramatic entrances." Kwame's face gave nothing away. "Step away from the child." Layla tilted her head. "Interesting. Not hello, not why. Straight to fatherhood." Nia made a sound low in her throat, something between fury and disbelief. Layla's eyes flicked to her. And there she is. The ghost who never stayed buried. Kwame took one step forward. "You are finished." Layla laughed softly. "No, Kwame, I'm exposed. That's not the same thing." Jonah spoke next, voice cracking at the edges. "We can settle this. The child isn't hurt." Amara sobbed harder. "Mama!" Nia tried to move toward her. One of the men lifted his weapon half an inch. Kwame's security team raised theirs instantly. The warehouse froze. Layla sighed. Must men always ruin delicate conversations with guns? Kwame's voice dropped. "Delicate ended when you touched my daughter." Something changed in Layla's face, then not fear but irritation, as if she resented being pushed out of the clean world of strategy into the dirty world of consequences. She was never supposed to matter this much, Layla said. Nia recoiled as though struck. Kwame went colder. "Say that again." Layla spread her hands with almost elegant contempt. "Do you want honesty? Fine. A hidden woman from your past was inconvenient. A child from that woman was destabilizing. Your board likes order. Your mother likes lineage on her terms. Investors like predictable futures. I was building one. You were stealing one," Nia said, voice shaking. Layla looked at her almost pityingly. "Please, women like you call it stealing only when you lose." Before Nia could lunge, Kwame stepped in front of her. That movement did not go unnoticed. For the first time, Layla truly saw what had shifted. Not suspicion, not curiosity, loyalty, visible, chosen, unhidden. It was the one thing she had never managed to purchase from him. Jonah, panicking now, pointed toward Amara. "We didn't want the child dead. We just needed time." If Kwame signed before the truth surfaced, the restructuring would be locked. After that, it would be manageable. "Manageable," Kwame repeated. Jonah swallowed. "We could have relocated them, paid them, controlled the story." Nia stared at him with naked hatred. "You threatened me while I was pregnant." Jonah's eyes flickered. "That was answer enough." "You sent men to the clinic," she said, stepping around Kwame now. "You made me think my child would be hunted if I ever spoke his name." Jonah licked dry lips. "You were emotional. It was easier if you disappeared quietly." The silence after that statement felt obscene. Even Layla turned her eyes away for half a second, not from morality, but from distaste at his weakness. Kwame spoke without looking at Jonah. "Bind him." Two security men moved instantly. Jonah shouted, struggled once, and collapsed into terrified pleading almost immediately. So this was the man who had spent years controlling Door's messages and the architecture of ruin, not powerful, only useful. Not loyal, only greedy. Layla did not move. "Do you know the funniest part?" she said, watching Jonah being forced down. "He thinks he was my partner." Kwame's gaze snapped to her. Layla smiled faintly. He was an instrument. That was when the final pieces clicked into place, not only the forged messages, the deleted calls, the intercepted visits, the surveillance, the shell accounts, the engagement structure, but the psychology of it. Jonah had executed. Layla had designed. Nia whispered, horrified. "You built all of this?" "Yes," Layla said simply. "Because men like Kwame do not lose power through open attack. They lose it through intimate disorder." A woman from the wrong background. A child with inconvenient legitimacy. Emotion at the wrong moment. Scandal where there should be succession. Kwame looked at her as though she were speaking from the bottom of a grave. "And you thought I would marry you after all that?" Layla's smile faded. "No," she said. "I thought you would never know." That honesty did what pleading never could. It erased the last trace of her humanity from the room. Kwame nodded once to Temba. "Take Amara." Layla moved then, fast, desperate. Reaching for the gun concealed in her coat, she did not get it out in time. Temba struck her wrist. The weapon clattered across concrete. One of the hired men bolted toward the back and was tackled before reaching the door. Another dropped his hands instantly and sank to his knees. Nia ran. No one stopped her this time. She fell to her knees in front of Amara and tore at the restraints with trembling hands. I'm here, baby. Mama's here." Amara cried so hard she could barely breathe. I thought, no." Nia kissed her face, her hair, her forehead, every place terror had touched. No. I'm here." Kwame crossed the room slower. He wanted to rush, wanted to gather the child, to swear impossible promises, to make his presence immediate. But this moment belonged first to the mother who had earned it in blood and sleeplessness and fear. When Nia finally lifted her head, Amara reached for him too. That nearly broke him. He crouched beside them. "It's over," he said softly. Amara threw one arm around his neck while clinging to Nia with the other, as though her small body had already decided what the adults were still learning. Safety could include both of them. Outside, sirens finally approached. This time Kwame had allowed them, not to save the child. She was already saved, but because some justice deserved witnesses. An hour later, under warehouse floodlights and the cold glare of cameras from trusted legal media already summoned by Kwame's office, Layla and Jonah were led out in restraints. No private settlements, no quiet disappearances, no sealed scandal handled behind tinted glass. Public truth, the kind they had denied others. Nia stood wrapped in a blanket with Amara in her arms as officers catalogued evidence. Temba handed Kwame a drive containing the recovered messages, transfer trails, surveillance orders, and live audio from the warehouse confrontation. Enough to destroy reputations, enough to sustain charges, enough to make silence impossible. Kwame looked across the flashing lights toward Layla as she was pushed into a vehicle. She met his gaze once. There was hatred there now, and shock. Not that she had lost, but that she had lost publicly. Good, he thought. Let shame do what power failed to. When he turned back, he found his mother's car arriving at the perimeter, summoned not by him, but by news already spreading through the upper circles of the city. The old woman stepped out regal, even in distress, took one look at the child in Nia's arms, and stopped. For the first time in his life, Kwame watched his mother's certainty crack. He did not go to her. Not yet. Tonight belonged elsewhere. He crossed back to Naya and Amara and stood beside them while the cameras rolled and the men who had called themselves untouchable disappeared into police transport. The city would talk by morning. The board would panic. Families would deny, recalculate, and reposition. But none of that mattered compared to one simple fact now standing in the open. Under hard white light, his daughter would never again be treated like a secret problem to be erased. And as Nia leaned shakily against him, not out of surrender but exhaustion, Kwame understood that justice was not the end of this story, only the first clean breath after years under water. 3 weeks later, the city was still talking. Nairobi had many appetites, but scandal was among its favorite meals, and the fall of Laila Bako and Jonah Mbele had fed every boardroom salon charity luncheon and whispered family dinner from Karen to Westlands. News channels dissected the warehouse footage. Business analysts debated what the exposure meant for Dlamini Holdings. Legal experts discussed fraud, coercion, kidnapping, conspiracy, and the chain of manipulated records stretching back 6 years. But inside the quiet house Kwame had leased outside the city for temporary privacy, the world sounded different. It sounded like crayons rolling off a table, like a kettle boiling, like a little girl laughing because a butterfly had landed on the sleeve of her cardigan and chosen the prettiest person by mistake. It sounded, in other words, like life trying to begin again. The house sat on a green rise just beyond the edge of the city, far enough from the noise to breathe close enough that hospitals' lawyers and trusted staff could reach them quickly. It was not grand in the way Kwame's penthouse had been grand. It was warmer, lower. Sunlight moved through the rooms instead of merely reflecting off expensive surfaces. There was a small garden with lemon trees, a swing under an acacia, and a narrow stone path where Amara liked to walk while giving long speeches to ants. Kwame had chosen it carefully, not because it impressed anyone, because it felt inhabitable, because for the first time in years, impressing people seemed like a childish hobby. That morning he stood in the kitchen wearing a dark sweater instead of a suit, slicing strawberries, with the solemn concentration of a man still adjusting to the fact that breakfast could matter more than quarterly reports. Across the table, Amara was drawing a family map in purple crayon. Nia entered quietly, watching them for a moment before either noticed. She had been doing that often. Watching. Not with suspicion alone anymore, though suspicion had not vanished. Rather with the careful attention of someone relearning whether peace could be trusted when it arrived without asking for anything in return. Amara looked up first. "Mama, he cut them too big again." Kwame glanced down at the strawberries. "They are perfectly reasonable. They are giant. They are ambitious." Amara shook her head in pity. "That's not how fruit works." Naya, against her will, smiled. The sight of that smile still had the power to alter a room. Kwame looked at her briefly, then back at the cutting board, as if he had already learned that staring too long at rare mercies could make them vanish. "What does the judge say?" he asked her. Nia stepped closer, glanced at the strawberries, and said, "The court finds them guilty of unnecessary drama." Amara gasped in delight. Kwame placed one hand over his heart. "I object." "Objection denied," Nia replied. For one suspended moment, the old spark between them appeared again, not the reckless romance of youth, but something gentler and far more dangerous familiarity, trying to survive the wreckage. Then the kettle clicked. The moment passed. That was how healing moved in this house, not like a miracle, like weather, drifting in then out, sunlight in one room, shadow in the next. No certainty, only persistence. The legal process was moving faster than anyone expected, mostly because Kwame had refused every private approach. There had been many. A senior politician offering to stabilize public embarrassment in exchange for strategic silence. 2 board members urging internal containment to protect the company's value. Even Layla's family, through polished intermediaries, had proposed quiet resolutions dressed up as dignity. Kwame had rejected all of it. Public truth had wounded too many people already for private comfort to become its reward. The evidence was overwhelming. The warehouse audio alone would have ensured charges. Added to that were the falsified messages, shell transfers, surveillance contracts, forged office access records, and medical intimidation tied to Nia's pregnancy years earlier. Layla's lawyers were still trying to turn design into distance, insisting she had not physically threatened Nia herself. But the law for once had found its spine. Jonah had broken first. He had confessed in stages, first under pressure, then under fear, and finally under the dawning realization that Layla would sacrifice him without blinking. He gave up passwords, archived files, names of contractors, and details of meetings he thought had made him important. In the end, he had exposed himself most clearly through the thing he wanted most to hide, that he had enjoyed deciding who got to reach Kwame and who did not. Petty power, ugly and small, yet enough to destroy lives. Nia listened to none of the legal briefings directly, unless they concerned Amara's safety. That boundary was deliberate. She had lived too long with fear entering her home through other people's decisions. Now she chose what crossed the threshold. This afternoon, though, one confrontation could no longer be delayed. Kwame's mother arrived just after 1. Her name was Efwa Dlamini, and for most of Kwame's life she had carried herself like a woman born wearing consequence. Elegant, disciplined, not unloving, but often difficult to distinguish from it. Reputation order and family control had been the pillars of her worldview for so long that even her kindness often arrived in the shape of instruction. Nia saw the car through the front window and went still. Kwame noticed immediately. "You don't have to see her today." Nia folded her arms. "Yes, I do." He looked at her. "You owe her nothing." "That may be true," Nia said quietly. "But I owe myself the chance not to be afraid." That answer silenced him. When Efua entered, Amara was in the garden with Saad, who had come to stay for a few days and now occupied the role of beloved aunt with effortless authority. That gave the adults 10 minutes of privacy before the child would inevitably come bursting back in with flowers, dirt, or questions. Efua stood in the sitting room and took in the house, the sunlight, the simple furniture, the woman before her. Nia did not lower her eyes. That perhaps was the first shock. The second was that Kwame remained standing beside Nia rather than apart from her. Something old and rigid shifted in Efua's expression. "I have come," she said at last, "to say what should have been said long ago, even if I did not know the full shape of the wrong at the time." Nia waited. Efua continued, and for the first time her voice carried no ceremonial polish. "When you tried to reach my son years ago, I was told you were unstable, manipulative, and seeking advantage. I did not verify that. I accepted what was convenient because it matched my fear of scandal." She paused. "For that failure and for every consequence that followed from it, I am deeply ashamed." The words settled into the room with unusual gravity. Nia had imagined many versions of this encounter. Condescension, defensive sorrow, dignified denial. This plain shame was harder to resist. Still, she asked, "If none of this had come out, would you ever have wondered whether the woman kept away from your family had been telling the truth?" Efua did not evade. "No," she said. "And that is the ugliest part." Kwame looked at his mother with an expression Nia had never seen on his face before grief stripped of obedience. Efua seemed to feel it. She turned then to him. "I raised you to value control too much." Kwame answered quietly. "You raised me to mistake distance for strength." Her face tightened, as if the sentence had been waiting years for a place to land. Before anyone could say more, the garden door flew open. Amara ran in carrying a crushed yellow flower. "There's a bug with a shiny back, and Sade says not to marry it because I'm too young." She stopped dead, saw Efua, looked from one adult to another, then whispered to Nia, not softly enough. "Is this another rich person problem?" Sade, entering behind her, nearly choked. Kwame actually laughed. A real laugh. Brief, startled, alive. Even Nia had to turn away for a second. Efua, to her credit, knelt slowly despite the expense of her dress. "No," she said to Amara. "I hope I am a grandmother problem." The room went utterly still. Amara blinked. "What's that?" Kwame crouched beside his daughter. "It means she is my mother." Amara considered this deeply. Then she looked at Efua's elegant handbag, her careful jewelry, her perfect posture. "So she's the queen lion." Silence. Then Saad began laughing openly, and this time no one stopped her. Efua, after one startled breath, smiled. The smile transformed her more than any apology had. Something like that, she admitted. Amara nodded, satisfied, then held out the crushed flower. You can have this, but it's a little broken. Afua accepted it like a gift from royalty. And just like that, history lost its balance for a moment. Not erased, not healed entirely, but interrupted by innocence again. Later that evening, after Amara had eaten, argued with bath time, demanded 2 stories instead of 1, and finally fallen asleep with her rabbit under one arm and a toy lion under the other, the house softened into quiet. Kwame stood in the doorway of her room longer than necessary. Nia beside him watched their daughter breathe. She still curls her hand like that when she sleeps, Kwame murmured. Nia looked at him. How would you know? He swallowed. I used to do it. My grandmother hated it. Said it meant stubborn dreams. Nia glanced down at Amara's tiny fist beneath her cheek. A small thing. A strange thing. Yet it moved through her with surprising force. Another inheritance. Another lost detail found too late and still somehow found. They stepped out and pulled the door nearly closed. The hallway light was low. The house was hushed. Outside, crickets stitched the dark together. For a few seconds they simply stood there. No lawyers, no sirens, no accusations. Only aftermath. Nia spoke first. She asked me yesterday if you would still be here when the next rainstorm comes. Kwame's eyes shifted to hers. What did you tell her? That I don't answer promises that aren't mine to make. He nodded once. Fair. She leaned against the wall, looking suddenly more tired than angry. I don't know what this becomes, she admitted. You and me. This. Any of it. I know. I'm not ready to pretend love is simple because truth finally came out. I know. I am not the girl you lost. His answer came gently. No. And I am not the man who lost you. That was the closest either had come to naming change aloud. Nia looked at him for a long time. Then she said the most honest thing left between them. I don't trust happy endings. Kwame considered that. Then, with no performance in his voice, he replied, Good. Neither do I. Something in her face loosened, not into certainty, into relief, because maybe the way forward did not require illusion. Maybe it required only 2 people finally willing to stand inside what was broken without decorating it into a lie. Kwame took a slow breath. I am not asking you to come back to me, he said. I'm asking for the chance to build something true in front of her, whatever shape that takes. Whatever pace it needs. Nia lowered her eyes briefly. When she looked up again, there were tears there, but not the violent tears of grief. Softer ones. More dangerous ones. The first shape, she said quietly, is breakfast tomorrow. She'll expect the strawberries smaller. He nodded. Then I'll cut them smaller. A tiny smile touched her mouth. And the second shape, Nia glanced toward Amara's room. The second shape, she said, is that when she wakes from a nightmare at 2 in the morning, Kwame finished the sentence, someone is there before she fully opens her eyes. Nia did not answer with words. She only stepped a little closer until they stood side by side in the quiet hallway, listening to their daughter sleep. No grand reconciliation, no dramatic kiss, no false perfection, just a mother, a father, and the fragile beginning of a family no longer hidden, no longer hunted, and no longer ashamed of being real. For the first time in many years, no one in that house was preparing to run. And that more than any courtroom victory or public scandal was the true ending. Not that justice had been done, but that love, responsibility, and truth had finally been allowed to stay. Sometimes the deepest wounds in life are not caused by hatred, but by lies, silence, and the people who choose convenience over truth. This story reminds us that One deception can steal years from a family. But no matter how much time is lost, love still has the power to find its way back when people choose courage over fear. Being a parent is not about blood alone. It is not about a name on paper, wealth, or biology. True parenthood is shown in presence, sacrifice, protection, and the willingness to stay when life becomes difficult. Kwame learned that fatherhood was not something he earned the moment he discovered the truth. It was something he had to prove through his actions every single day. And Nia taught us that real strength is not found in never breaking, but in surviving pain while still protecting the people you love. Life also teaches us that what is hidden in darkness will eventually come into light. Those who manipulate, betray, and harm others for selfish gain may seem powerful for a time, but truth has a way of catching up to everyone. Justice may be delayed, but when it comes, it arrives with weight. Most importantly, healing does not mean pretending the past never happened. Healing means choosing to build something beautiful even after being broken. It means learning to trust again, love again, and hope again despite everything. If this story touched your heart, tell me in the comments. What part moved you the most, and do you believe broken trust can ever truly be rebuilt? And if you enjoy emotional stories filled with powerful lessons, justice and healing, don't forget to subscribe and join me for the next unforgettable story.